Ah, having a little lunch break. Stay at home mom lunch break. I'm just changing all the sheets. I've got 6 teenagers here this week, friends of my boys, and they are having a big time. My middle son is getting ready to go to work as a busboy. That's fun. And I just thought, this is a big topic, school choice. So a lot of new data just came out about school choice, and I think people have questions in general about vouchers and how they work, and I think it's an important conversation, especially for me to have, considering I have 2 boys at a boarding school, a private boarding school, where they have scholarships to attend, scholarships from my parents, but scholarships nonetheless, and about 40% of their student body is on scholarship there. And so you might say, well, shoot, you should love a voucher. It would help people go. But when you have a school that's that expensive, a voucher does not actually get people there. Good grades might get them there with a scholarship, but not a voucher. So I think it's an important conversation to have. Hey, Leanne, I want to turn off this fan. And my name is Adrienne Wood. I have a blog, Tales of an Educated Debutante. And I have an undergraduate degree from Meredith College in Child Development. I have a master's in early intervention from UNC Chapel Hill. And I have a PhD in educational research and policy analysis from NC State. And I taught at NC State. I worked for the provost. I worked at Wake County Public Schools in grants, and I worked at Frank Porter Graham Child Development Institute as an assistant researcher. And then I had children, and I did stay at home. There's kind of this thing of like, why should a stay-at-home mom have an opinion? I will say that now I do work. I know it's hard for people to believe that I make money doing this, but I do. I make more than I ever could have with a PhD in a university setting. So it's great. So I guess I get the benefit of being a stay-at-home mom, and I make an income so that I can do things for my kids that I want to happen, things that I want to pay for, not things that I necessarily think the state of North Carolina should pay for. So long ago, we had a wonderful governor that everybody loved. His name was Jim Hunt. And Jim Hunt was, I guess he was a Democrat, right? But people loved him as Republicans because he was a big fan of education. And he was also fiscally conservative in the long run. So when we talk about saving money and we think, okay, how are we going to save money? One thing that the research tells us is we spend money on early childhood education. It will save money later on. The data is very clear. So you're 3 times less likely to go to prison. There was a really great research study called the Abecedarian Project out of Chapel Hill, and I think those children are now well into their 40s. And they basically flipped a quarter, and they gave 125 high-quality childcare, and the other 125 had free diapers. And then they agreed to be in this study for a long time. And so when you look at more likely to graduate from college, more likely to hold a job, more likely to need public benefits, more likely not to go to prison, which is very expensive, you really saw that this early upfront expense was super smart. So I'm all for spending money. I think one thing we have gotten into is that vouchers or school choice, because I use school choice, should everybody have it? But Jim Hunt said this awesome thing. He said, we have public transportation available. We have a CAT bus. We have the government subsidizes the railroad system. We have these things available. But if you don't want to utilize the busing system or the train system, no one ever subsidizes your vehicle, right? So just because you don't like the CAT bus doesn't mean that we're going to give you $8,000 towards a Toyota Corolla. And I guess that feels similar to me, and I like that he said that, because I thought, okay, So when people say, well, your kids go to private school, why do you have an interest in this? I would say to you, I don't expect taxpayers to pay for my kids to go to private school. And what North Carolina is doing, and what other states have already done, Texas is a great one to look at, is we have a lot of children in private school in North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina does not pay for them to go. So if we start, so right now, it is basically like I have 4 children. We have used the public school system for 33 years collectively. I have 2 in public school now, and when my 2 big boys went over to private school, no money followed them, right? They just suddenly didn't exist anymore. So I could be just like somebody who didn't have children. But in this case, when the voucher program starts, what North Carolina wants to do is raise the voucher expense to $500 million, $500 million a year. That's $500 million. And they want to give money to everyone, no matter their income. So you could have the owner of SAS, you could have the owner of Red Hat who has 6 children, and we are going to give Red Hat guy $22,000 a year to subsidize his children's education at Ravenscroft or Cary Academy, schools that cost well over $30,000. We're going to give him $3,500 a year to go to that clearly he does not need. And my argument to you would be, he's making a choice to go to private school. Why would we pay for his children to go? And you might say, well, the money should follow the child. It doesn't follow the child when it comes to transportation. And then it's actually a tax break. So to me, if you want to give somebody a tax break, give them a tax break. But then you're penalizing. You have JoJo down the street, and JoJo down the street doesn't have any children. So Red Hat is going to get $22,000 in vouchers, and JoJo is going to get nothing back, right? And they're both paying the same towards the public school system. So again, now we're financing wealthy families. Now this is important. This is really important when you talk about vouchers with people. And a lot of people don't really know, and they don't want to take the time. They think they're awfully bright. And, school choice is kind of a buzzword, and we're going to just talk like we're experts. And I think it's important to look at the data. So North Carolina has the least requirements of any state in the entire country when it comes to what schools can get voucher money. So just listen to that for a minute. So let's say you still say, Adrienne, I think we need vouchers. Do you believe that we should give schools money, private schools money, with no strings attached? Do you believe that? So Amelia's making a great point. If we start giving government money to private schools, there needs to be more accountability. Absolutely agree, Amelia. It would be hard for me to believe that anyone with a lick of sense could support the voucher program how it is set up currently. So if the schools that get voucher money, $500 million, that's $500 million. $500 million. If you give them money, do you know what they have to do? They do not have to have an attendance policy. They do not have to offer any curriculum. They have to do no testing. They don't have to have any licensed teachers. And they don't have to accept all children. So you might have, we have about 27 schools in North Carolina currently that receive over $1 million a year for the voucher program that's in place. Currently, the voucher program in North Carolina has an income requirement. So you have to make below a certain amount in order to get a voucher. Most people would argue that's a good idea. But what North Carolina has found is that people aren't taking advantage of it. So our General Assembly, Michael Lee specifically, has said, how can we show that we need more voucher money when we don't? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to just take away the income requirement. So now we can give all the people that are already in private school, we'll give them money. And this will be great. we'll spend $500 million on that, right? So some of you might say, well, I don't know if I want my tax dollars going to that. Well, when you look at the $26 million voucher schools currently in North Carolina, what's super interesting about them, and you can, Education NC has them all listed with the requirements and the money. So like there, in one case, there was a school in Eastern North Carolina that wouldn't allow a child to come because his parents were a gay couple, right? So he was not allowed to come. 9 different schools that accept vouchers in North Carolina over $1 million require a minimum of a $200 application fee. So you might say to me, well, why not? So you automatically are discounting low-income families from applying, right? So you have people that are saying, well, you send your kids to this expensive school, but you think it's terrible to have school choice. I don't even know if I do. I think school choice that's actually not a choice under the guise of being choice is pretty crappy. And I would think most would be. So if you can't afford the application fee in Fayetteville, North Carolina, then you can't even go. If you have a child like my son Amos who has an IEP or disability, there is no choice for me to go, right? There's no choice. And so again, if we're going to give $8,000 to a child for a voucher program, and the average tuition at a private K-12 school nationwide is $12,350. On average, vouchers currently now are $4,600 a year. But if we raise it, and then the average cost of a school is $12,350, how is that going to help our low-income families? Where are they going to come up with the $8,000? Or the $10,000, or the 20, or the 30, or the 40, or the 50. Years ago, I talked about Amos, my son, and I was talking about the school choice. And this is kind of a long-winded video, but I think sit down, you have a lunch break, take a little time, stay-at-home moms, you can take an hour off too, and we can talk. So how it is currently in North Carolina is that there's a personal education savings account. It's called NCESA, and it was established in 2017 by the General Assembly. And it provides $9,000 of taxpayer money for families like mine that don't want to go to public school. So Amos, about $16,000 a year is spent on Amos. Now, I could apply to this $9,000 and send him to another school. But again, there is no other school where I live available for Amos, a private school. But let's just pretend there is, okay? In 2013, the Special Education's Grants for Children with Disability programs was added on top by the North Carolina General Assembly. This was another $8,000. So now you have $8,000 plus 9, you have $17,000 for Amos to go to a private school of my choice. Again, there is no private school of my choice available. So right now Amos is getting $16,000 and I've just been offered $17,000 to leave the public school. In addition, this new voucher program will offer me $4,200 for Amos. So I want you to do the math. We have $8,000 for the Parent Education Savings Account. We have $9,000 for the Special Eligibility Grant for Disabilities. That's $17,000. And now we have $4,200 that's currently available. So that puts Amos up to $21,200 for private school tuition. And you might say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, I would tell you, one, no one is going to live where I do if they want that to exist, because there is no school available for Amos, whether I have $21,000, $48,000, $63,000, $72,000. There is not one. But I am told this is choice for me. This is school choice. This is going to be a wonderful thing for you. So here's the question that I asked Mark Robinson and Mark Johnson one night years ago. I'd gone to see them. They were both running. They kind of were at a town hall meeting at Nash Community College, and they each had a chance to speak. And both of them talked about the voucher program. And I went up to the two of them afterwards, and I said to them, tell me something. Tell me something. If it's really about school choice, then why can't I have my $21,200 and give it to my public school that I love and adore? You're willing to give me $21,200 to leave, but you won't let me give it to the public school that I choose, that I think is wonderful. So my choice is to stay. And you know what they both said? I didn't know that. I had no idea. That can't be right. That's what Mark Johnson said. That can't be right. And Mark Robinson said, I have no idea. So when you have someone running for governor or whatever they're running for, these are the types of questions you need to ask. When somebody in the General Assembly says to you, you're going to love this school choice, ask hard questions. Do your research. Ask teachers. Ask parents. Ask people who really know what they're talking about. Because it's all cute and fun to say, we love school choice. But do we love school choice? So in Edenton, our little town, we're about to spend $60 million on a new high school. If $500 million gets plugged into the system, the Amoses will still be at the new high school, right? Like Amos doesn't have any choice, so he's going to be there. But what about all the kids that their families maybe are a little wealthier, and they're going to say to them, hey, we'll give you $4,200, $3,500, $8,000, and you can go to a private school an hour down the road. We're going to lose children from our public school system, and they're going to be in schools that the data says are no better than our public schools. And that's an important thing to say. So the question is, you pay for your kids to go to better schools. Does the research say they're better schools? Particularly the ones that are maybe $6,000 or $7,000? The research doesn't support it. So then at that point, we're just taking tax dollars and funding private schools. I think it's really important to talk to your superintendents and to your teachers about what do they think. So we had a letter that was published by all the superintendents in Eastern North Carolina. And I think most of us respect state employees, school employees. And they commented on this Bill 406, which is Choose Your School, Choose Your Future. And here's what they said. Here's what they said. Let's see here. Okay. To whom it may concern, and I'm going to read it to you. This is dated May 31st, 2023. So that's about 2 months ago. The superintendent members of the Northeast Regional Education Service Alliance would like to express their concern with Senate Bill 406 and House Bill 823, both of which seek to expand the voucher program. Specifically, the superintendents are concerned with the negative financial impact this expansion would have on school districts in the Northeast region of the state. Number one, most of the 19 school districts in the Northeast region of the state are among the poorest. This expansion will redistribute tax dollars away from school districts already struggling to meet the needs of their current student membership. It is unlikely that the county governments have the means to make up for any shortfalls generated by this expansion. According to the North Carolina Office of State Budget Management, all counties except one are projected to see a decline in state public school funding as a result of this expansion. While most counties project to lose 1% to 2%, several counties project to lose more. Hyde and Washington County are projected to lose 3%, Hertford County 4%, Pasquotank 5%, Bertie 7%, Northampton 8%. In most of the Northeast counties, the public school system is the county's largest employer. The loss of these state funds, along with an expansion in the number of opportunity scholarships granted, will most certainly equate to a loss of positions, thereby increasing unemployment in already economically depressed areas. Now, I want you to think about this for a minute. So this past week, we lost our hospital in Williamston, Martin County. So 200 people lost their jobs. Can you imagine if they lost 5% of their funding? So then you have people with no jobs and no school. So you know what happens? They move, and then Williamston no longer exists. What about Chowan County? If the teachers lose their jobs, then the husbands have to move too, right? Because we have two-parent working families. So this is really important to think about. What does this do to Eastern North Carolina? So you want your cake and you want to eat it too. You want the government to pay for all of our kids to go to private school instead of acknowledging our public schools are important, just like our downtown. I go downtown and I spend more money at the shoe store or the hardware store over Amazon because I value my downtown, right? I don't say Walmart's cheaper, that's better. Number 4, private schools are not equally available to all students. Limited access to school choice in rural counties requires public schools to meet the needs of the diverse population they serve. Reducing funds undermines the public school system ability to afford its tax-paying citizens an education. So you have children with disabilities that are not taught. You have people that can't afford the $200 application fee. You have parents who don't have transportation and maybe they can't go. These are really important things. Number 5, generous state dollars through the Needs-Based Public School Capital Fund have been awarded to Tier 1 counties, many of which are in northeastern North Carolina, to modernize educational facilities. It is imperative to match this investment with appropriate funds to equip these facilities with high-quality staff and programs, and any loss of education dollars would seem to undercut this investment. Why are we putting in a $60 million school that we need so that we can turn around and try to get children not to go to that school? So you're going to end up with children with disabilities who have no place to go, parents who have no transportation, very poor families, and that's who's going to be left at the school. Is that what you want? Aside from the financial implications, there are also concerns over the consistency of instruction and accountability across 4 entirely different systems of education. While these bills may purport to increase competition in the education marketplace, that cannot be possible while private schools, home schools, charter schools, and traditional public schools are held to different standards, and with regard to homeschools and private schools, have little to no oversight to how state tax dollars are used. So this is what I just talked to you about. There's no curriculum required. There's no attendance policy required. There are no teachers that have to be certified that is required. No curriculum is required, and there's no requirement to serve children. So your parents can be gay, you're not allowed to come. You identify as transgender? No way, Jose. You have autism? You're out. You have no car? Sorry, we don't want you. Your tax dollars are going to pay for these schools. $500 million a year under school choice. And maybe I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I like to think that I've used my education and my platform to build up Eastern North Carolina. I want it to be successful. I have 200 people coming in October. That builds up our tax base. I try to support small businesses. I put my money where my mouth is. I put my money where my mouth is. I do things to support my community. Traditional public schools and even public charter schools have to follow a host of state and federal mandates ranging from testing programs to prescribed instructional materials and programs to rules and regulations. So a public school has to have licensed teachers. They have to do a certain curriculum. They have to have letters training. They have to do testing. They have to perform a certain way on a test. They can pay a certain amount for a teacher. Very explicit. The $500 million to private schools, no rules. We expect this level of accountability because we receive local, state, and federal tax dollars. Now, again, this is all the superintendents from Northeastern North Carolina saying this, not just some stay-at-home mom who sends her kids to boarding school, okay? Why then shouldn't private schools be subject to all the same rules, regulations, and mandates if they are also to be supported by the same state funds? Not demanding accountability or providing oversight of state-supported private and home schools simply amounts to a double standard. Does that make sense? Does it make sense? We are of the opinion that the Opportunity Scholarship expansion outlined in Senate Bill 406 and House Bill 823 will have very negative consequences for Northeastern North Carolina. As we have outlined, there are a host of potential problems. We urge our legislators to consider the impact to our public school districts in the Northeast and abandon any efforts to expand this program. Thank you for your support and consideration of our concerns. I'm going to tell you who signed this letter, because these are people you can reach out to if you have questions. If you don't trust a stay-at-home mom who thinks, she's just smarter than everybody else, then why don't you ask these superintendents who've given their life to public education because it matters to them? Barry Williams at Gates County Schools, Tanya Turner, Superintendent of Perquimans County Schools, Dr. Otis Smallwood, Bertie County Schools, Dr. Matthew Cheeseman, Beaufort County Schools, Dr. Linda Carr, Camden County Schools, Currituck County Schools, Steve Bassnight, Dare County Schools, Dr. Michael Sasser, Edenton Chowan Schools, signed this letter. If you live in Edenton and you think I'm full of shit about vouchers, then reach out to Dr. Sasser. You ask him if he wrote and signed his name on this letter, and you ask him why. Eric Cunningham, Halifax County Schools, Keith Parker, Elizabeth City County Schools, Jesse Pratt, Hertford, Melanie Shaver, Hyde, Michelle White, Martin County Schools, Rosa Atkins, Northampton County Schools, Ethan Linker, Pitt County Schools, Juliana Thompson, Roanoke Rapids, Karen Roseboro, Terrell County Schools, Dr. David White, Washington County Schools, Dr. Danny Williams, Weldon City Schools. So I hope you heard that. Hang on just a minute. So I think that letter is important. I also think it's really important, again, to talk about those superintendents. That was 19 superintendents from 17 rural counties. 1/6 of the superintendents in the entire state of North Carolina. That's 19 school systems in 17 counties. 13 of those counties have a Republican representative in the North Carolina General Assembly. 16 of them have a Republican representative in the North Carolina General Assembly Senate. All of those representatives signed on as a sponsor for expanding vouchers in the state. And ultimately, they're represented districts that include most of these LEAs. What does that say to you? It tells me that you need to really think about who you're voting for, and that you need to ask your representative, how is this going to help my county? Because your superintendents can't do everything. I can't do everything. But you can help. I think that let's just go over what you don't know about school vouchers. Again, top 10 things, just to ramp it up. So for the last 10 years, summary. North Carolina has had a voucher program. This year, $6,500 was given to 25,000 North Carolina students so they could attend private school. Now the North Carolina Senate wants to raise that amount. We will go from spending $133 million, which is what we spent in 2022, to $500 million in the next 10 years. Again, North Carolina private schools can turn anyone down they choose. You could have gay parents, you could have Down syndrome, you could not have a car, anybody they want to choose. You could not pay your $200 fee. You can turn them down. Voucher money will follow children. Wealthy families who currently choose private schools, like my own, pay the tuition. In fact, 72% of grandparents pay tuition. Would I want to live somewhere where private schools didn't exist? Absolutely not. Am I glad that we have more options than public transportation? You want to drive a Ferrari? Go ahead. You might have a Mazda. That's fine. Do I think the state should pay for you to have a car like everybody else? No. Do I think that the state should pay for your kids to go to private school? No, I don't. I think we should have a really good public school system, like we have a public transportation system. And if you don't like it and you want to do something different, then have at it. If you want to stay at the Ritz-Carlton and not the Hampton Inn, then go ahead with your bad self. If you don't like flying American Airlines and you want a jet, then have one. Does that mean I have access to a jet? No. But does that mean I don't think you should have access either? No. No. Just because the government is paying for me to have access to American Airlines, I can't take my money from American Airlines and get it for Wheels Up, right? Money will be taken from our local school system. In the current system, 100,000 North Carolina children attend private school, which cost taxpayers nothing. This new law that our candidate for governor, Mark Robinson, it will ensure that every family in North Carolina who uses private school, 100,000 children, will get a check per child. The wealthiest families in the state of North Carolina will receive money when their children have already been attending private school, which will basically maybe help. So if you had 6 kids and you got $4,500 per child, that's $27,000 a year. So that might pay for that rich family to go on a week-long Disney cruise. So just think about how you like your tax dollars to do that. They don't necessarily help poor people get a better education. Those better educations are expensive. The $6,500 would cover 1/5 of a $30,000 yearly tuition. The voucher is like using a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. So if you think that voucher is going to help you get into a school that really is amazing and offers Arabic and Mandarin Chinese and languages and all sorts of opportunities, that money is not getting the poor person there. So school choice is not for poor people. It is for rich people who want a tax deduction. Vouchers are a tax-free loan. School choice expert Joshua Cohen reports that a typical voucher school is a, quote, financially distressed, subprime private provider often jumping at the chance for a tax bailout to stay open, end quote, and boost attendance. So the schools that families can afford to go to with the voucher, maybe the voucher covers most of the tuition or all of it, those schools, that's less money than you're getting per child for a public school. We know that quality goes with money. So we're not giving people vouchers for $40,000, right? We're not actually going to give them that much money, because then somebody might say, why don't we just put all this money into public schools? Again, the voucher program is a tax break for the rich. 100,000 North Carolinians send their kids to private schools without a voucher. Next week, we will send them checks. So I have a condominium at the beach. We rent it out every summer. So this summer we rented it out for about 5 weeks at $3,000 a week. So we made $15,000. So I have 4 children, and I have 2 of them in private school. One will be going in a couple years. So that would give me $4,500, $13,500. So what that means is you're going to send me a check. It's going to be kind of awesome for $13,500, and I'm not going to have to rent my beach condo anymore. So you're going to pay for my second home, right? With your tax dollars. And you don't have a second home. And you're sort of pissed that I do. Do I think you should pay for mine? Hell no. Number 8, North Carolina has the least requirements of any state in the country when it comes to what schools are eligible for to get a voucher. No testing, no attendance, no curriculum, no licensed teachers. Number 9, many children will be left behind. Children like my son Amos, who has special needs and has no option. There are no private schools that will take him within a 50-mile radius of me. And kids, again, whose parents rely on school buses for transportation, or didn't get their paperwork in on time, or didn't have $200 for an application fee, they will not go. Number 10, and this is really the most important one that I think people really don't understand. Eastern North Carolina will falter, as those 17 superintendents told you. Our public schools will lose children whose families are promised a better education. As the money flows out, so will the teaching positions, and then people will be forced to move to larger cities. Small communities in Eastern North Carolina will resemble ghost towns, all in the name of school choice. And that's why I gave this talk today. When I see a comment that says, calls me a stay-at-home mom, which honestly I think is the most amazing job in the world, and I'm so honored to be a stay-at-home mom of 4 children, one with pretty severe disabilities, and be able to work and provide so that my children can go to camp and can spend time at the beach, and I can buy their books for school or maybe their clothes. I have this amazing gift that's been given to me, and I've built a platform, and I'm able to use my PhD in education to really share information. So when somebody just calls me a stay-at-home mom, like I'm a freaking idiot, it pisses me off. And when they say this, quote, I have to laugh at people who send their kids to a $60,000 a year private school, raising hell about how terrible it is to have school choice. I hope you understand now why it's not really funny and why my children at boarding school doesn't have anything to do with the taxpayers paying for it. Don't be dumb enough to think that that's really what happens. And if you want to support Mark Robinson as governor, go ahead. I'm so glad that I live in a country where we have freedom. You can have a jet, you can drive a Ferrari, you can send your kids to private school, you can have a beach house, but taxpayers should not be expected to pay for it. Why should our public school system be penalized and made to do so many things to earn their money, but we're just going to hand over $500 million to private schools with no accountability? Call me a stay-at-home mom, laugh at me all you want, but answer me that. And if you want to be a subscriber and have more real conversations like that, then come over. I would welcome you.